Welcome to the Bold Money Revolution podcast. This is your source for straight talking, no fluff, business and high performance conversations that add real depth and value to the way bold leaders live, work, and thrive. I'm your host, Tara Newman. I'm here to show you how to optimize your performance as a leader so that you can grow a business that is profit rich, efficient, and allows you to generate real tangible wealth for yourself and others. We are here to help you lead with your values, to perform without overwhelm and burnout, and to do your most important work in the world. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Bold Money Revolution podcast. And I am here with a dear friend, and I am so excited to be having this chat with my friend, Tamika Auwai. And we are talking about nurture marketing because that is the genius of Tamika. Tamika, can you share with folks what you do and who you do it for?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And first of all, I'm so stoked that we finally get to have this conversation for other people to hear, because we have a history of having these really fantastic conversations always. And I appreciate that about you. Yeah. So I am the CEO of Arisha Creative. We are a nurture marketing agency that serves coaches, mentors, teachers, coaching adjacent, fields. And what we really do, Tara, when I talk about nurture marketing, we help coaches to pre-sell their programs with a very proprietary framework that we use called the Nurture Matrix. So we help them to craft a 90-day nurture sequence that rolls across email and social media that turns more of their new leads into clients. And we do it in a way that means that they don't have to create new stuff all the time. So we like to talk about getting them off the content creation treadmill while we do this. So the big promise is we're going to pre-sell those programs, have them sold out months in advance, have people ready to step into your launch, already ready to buy, already with credit card in hand. And we'll do it in a way that keeps you from cranking out new content all the darn time.
Yeah, I really love, and we were saying this before we hit record, is that I love how specific you are around the nurture marketing.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's lots of different kinds of marketing. And I think I am a huge proponent of the nurture phase of selling. There's, 7 basic sales steps. One of them is nurture. And it's always in this one spot in this wheel. And I'm like, no. It is from the beginning. It's not a space in the wheel. It is an ongoing part of the process. And I love that you're repurposing, because the main reason why I really enjoy podcasting, but also email, is because you can repurpose and automate and create sequences where you're not having to do all the heavy lifting all the time.
Absolutely. You're not doing all the heavy lifting, and you can rest assured that you have a really thoughtful, intentional flow for your new leads to kind of move through to have them become ready to work with you. And that is of service to your business, obviously, because again, you don't have to do all the heavy lifting. But that's also of high service to the people that you raise your hand and say you want to help. If you're not actually helping them move along their buyer's journey and become ready to work with you so that they can step in and have whatever transformation it is that you offer, then what are we really doing here?
Exactly. And this is, you were talking about content that requires a business outcome when we were chatting before. And this is so important, because I get a lot of folks that come to me and they're like, if I just had the perfect social media strategy, if I just had the, whatever. And I'm like, well, those are tools. And we're not teaching people process. We're teaching tools before process. Yes. And therefore, we don't know why we're creating the content. Why are we using maybe a specific social media platform versus maybe a webinar versus maybe a podcast, or why are we doing all the things that we're doing? So having that content within a particular business outcome instead of just saying and spraying it.
Exactly. You find yourself if you are someone who's sitting and thinking about oh yeah, I'm always busy creating content. Ask yourself why. What are you actually trying to achieve? And you need to go deeper than, well, I'm trying to sell programs. Yes, of course, that's everybody. If we're in business to make sales, but with the specific tools, what is the outcome that you're trying to create, within those tools, right? And we really need to dive deeper and get really intentional. What do we want the ideal client to do next?
Yeah. How can we help them make a decision
Exactly.
whether this is for them or not for them. So basically, all of my content is around, in my opinion, is around how can I help this person make a decision about whether or not this is the right thing for them at this time.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, what are you seeing? What's working right now? I know that you just did a series on like old school marketing versus new school.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to just like, what trends are you seeing?
Yeah, I think, the biggest trend that I see, is that gone are the days when you could really rely on and I'm going to use kind of the old school marketing, online marketing funnel, like that you could rely on a, 15-day sequence that would result in people booking a call or buying a program or whatever else, right? That used to be sort of the primary way, the whole sequence of like you offer up a freebie, then they get on your list, they get a couple little welcome emails, then we get into like attend the sales webinar or book the sales call, and then we email them about that outcome for like 7 or 10 or whatever it is, number of days, and then expect that they would take action, right? And we used to do that, and we would see, we might see 20%, 25%, people would take you up on the offer, but that doesn't work anymore, right? That doesn't work anymore. We were talking about it, Tara, like folks are much more discerning. They're more discerning, first of all. Second of all, especially if you're in the coaching, mentoring, teaching space, like that industry in itself has exploded, right? Saturated. Like we're looking, like it's saturated. I don't know if it's saturated yet. This is where my like little woo-woo self comes in. And I still believe there's more than enough clients for every single coach out there, even though we've got, 60 million trillion coaches and coaches who coach coaches and all of that. So maybe there's a little bit of saturation, but the higher self wants to say, okay, yeah, there's enough for everybody. But certainly what it means is that for any given coach, your ideal clients they've got options. So gone are the days when you'd be the only person sending out a freebie about a particular, topic. I remember when, kind of the premium, priced model was out there, right? And there'd be, a handful of coaches were talking about selling high ticket, right? Like way back in the day back, right? A handful of coaches talking about that. And so, I remember, being a newer business owner, and it's kind of like, ooh, we got this freebie. And it was like so exciting, but there were only a handful of mentors really teaching this, right? If you think like 10 years ago, 12 years ago, something like that, right? So, you look, okay, I have these, couple of mentors. Yeah. I know who I resonate with and I move through. Now that is double, triple, quadruple, so on and so forth, right? So your little itty bitty 15-day sequence now, like that's a drop in the ocean, right? It's a drop in the ocean compared to, the dozens of mentors that will come across their field. And certainly social media and the way that algorithms work is that anytime you look for a coach on one particular area, you're going to be flooded with other coaches who do the same thing, right? So you got to remember that your audience, they've got options. They're more discerning. And so that little 15-day sequence, we were talking about this, earlier too, maybe you could say 15% will be ready to buy when they opt into your world. I think it's much fewer. I think, from what I'm seeing in terms of what's working and what's not, what my clients are seeing, it's more like 2 to 5% are ready to buy. Really, and so what that means is that you can't rely on that, kind of old school funnel. And instead, what's really working is considering and remembering that, what's really needed is that deep nurture. What's really needed is an extended funnel beyond that first 15 days. That first 15 days is like, it's nothing, right? You really want to look at nurturing people over a 60, 90 days, sometimes even 6 months.
6 months. Yep.
Right. Depending on the industry, period. You really want to, consider nurturing them over this longer period. And the other thing that's used to work and is no longer working is that what nurture actually means has had to get very, very specific, because again, gone are the days where we could just like, I'm nurturing by making content available. right? I'm nurturing by being consistent on social. I'm nurturing by having a how-to video on YouTube published every week. Like that no longer is going to cut it. Now what's working is that we've got to get really intentional, really clear first about our ideal clients, about the buyer's journey that they're moving through, about the experience that they're having, psychologically and emotionally as they make the decision to work with somebody around solving their problem. We need to get really clear on what that is. And we need to provide content that is designed to move them along their buyer's journey over that sort of 60-day, 90-day, maybe even 6-month mark. And when we do that really intentionally, what it means is sometimes they actually are ready earlier. Right. That's the only way that I'm seeing. If we're thinking about, the old school, funnel not really working, the only thing that I'm seeing that's actually shortening it just a bit is by putting this really intentional content out there, moving people along their buyer's journey so that they lean in, they raise their hand, earlier. That's it.
Yeah, I think the two things that I'm specifically seeing working right now is how specific can you be about your best fit clients? Like, how can you find where they're being underserved and specifically speaking to those points in their journey? And that takes building relationships.
Mm-hmm.
That takes having conversations with people. That takes listening. So when you tell me, like, I'm a big proponent of still having sales calls as a conversion mechanism. And do I convert some people by email? Do some people just show up and they're like, they click on my link and buy because I've done a good job nurturing them through the podcast, through the email? Sure. But I want to talk to folks. I want to hear what's going on for them. I want to be better educated myself in, what's pressing and top of mind for these people that I care about and that I want to be serving and supporting. So, and people are doing away with that. Oh, well, sales calls aren't cool anymore, and talking to people isn't cool anymore. And we just want them to click on a link and buy. But it's really that it's not that it's not cool. It's that you're uncomfortable doing it.
Right. You're uncomfortable doing it and you're ineffective at doing it.
Yeah.
Right. Because what I do appreciate is the drawing the line in the sand and saying, like, I'm not available to have, to spend an hour, on a sales call or 90 minutes on a sales call. And I'm speaking particularly in the coaching industry. There are some coaches who are like their sales calls turn into coaching. Let's get it. This is why our conversations are so good, because we can do that and it can still be a really great conversation. But, the sales call story becomes a coaching call. And
correct, because a sales call is not a coaching call.
It's not.
And there are people who are teaching people to like coach and like, because they're teaching the old school, like throw an ad out there, get very cold traffic, have zero nurture. And now you're nurturing them on a sales call.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go from cold to soul.
Sales call from like a PM in a Facebook group. This is a very cold person. And now you're warming them up. You're nurturing them on the actual sales call. And that's not what you should be doing. When you're nurturing people the way Tamika teaches you how to do it and the way I do it, is by the time they get on a call with you, they are ready to hand you money.
Exactly. Absolutely. Like the call, when we have sales calls within the agency, we're basically already talking about what's going to happen next. They're literally just filling me in on where they're at, what's going on for them right now. Like, but are
you a real human being?
Yeah. Are you a real human being? We'll do a little, I just
want to make sure you're the same person you are on your podcast.
Yeah. It's like an energy read, and it's, at maximum, it's like a 30-minute conversation sort of at maximum. But again, it's not a sales call, really. I don't, it's like let's make sure we like each other. And, and we do this by, again, we have really effective nurture in place. And of course, and I know that you do this too. There's just some really smart things you do to have someone step into a sales call, ready to buy it. Like, number one, what are your prices? What's the offer? Like, we give all that stuff in advance too. I know you keep your prices are available. So people, aren't coming in with the big, like, what is this thing? Like they know what they're buying. We're having the conversation to see if you're a fit. Right.
Because I think that your nurture content should should help people identify if they are ready for what you're actually selling. And if you want them to be able to identify if they are ready, you need to be transparent.
Exactly.
About what you're doing.
Exactly. You need to be transparent. And I think the other piece that you need to be doing is that you need to be ensuring that they are, again, like I believe so much in the psychology of buying and being, sort of mentally prepared to buy. So in order to do that, you want to be ensuring that they understand kind of what they had been doing previously to solve their problem that isn't working. Like, what are they believing about their problem that is not supportive of stepping into transformation? So you don't need to be on a sales call sort of like, yes, okay, there might be objections, but like, I'm not talking about massive belief shifting on a sales call. You're not going to massively shift someone's beliefs on a sales call, right? If they need to have their brains oriented a certain way in order to be able to be aligned to work with you, right? I'm not talking about being manipulative. I'm just talking about ensuring that they have their perspective shifted so that they can see why your solution might be the most supportive approach for them. So they can see why the other, ways that they might have attempted to solve the problem before might not have worked. That's what I'm talking about. Like, they need to have had that experience before they step into the sales call.
In your nurture content.
Exactly.
So my objections get handled in my nurture content.
Exactly. Same, right? So it's, you want to, like people, again, when you make that invitation for them to step in a sales call, or if it's the click the button, whatever your particular flavor is, like, they need to have had that whole process before. The sales call is not the place for that. And yes, the sales page, right? If we think about old school sales pages, they're intended to do some of that too, but that's a big ask. In this day, in this climate, it's a big ask. Like, I'm curious, and actually I'm like, who's doing long form sales pages still? I think people are, but I wonder if they really work. I'm curious.
So I don't like long form sales pages. I typically don't ever have like a cohesive sales page. It's my content, it's the podcast, it's my email, it's get on a call with me. Because I just tend to not be able to keep up with it, but also people don't read it. So like exactly. I get people on sales calls with me and they're asking me questions that I've addressed maybe in the sales page, which is fine, but we're not reading sales pages. I'm reading long form content.
Yeah, exactly.
Blog content.
Yep.
But I'm not reading sales pages.
Correct. And, before we have sales calls, we give out our sort of overview of what it looks like to work with us. And it's a PDF, nothing fancy, and it's 16 pages. And people read that. They read the hell out of that. And they send us emails saying, thank you so much for explaining what it is. I mean, again, with our done for you work, it's like a 7-month process. And they really want to understand what it's going to look like for them and their team and everything else. But I'm telling you, if that was like a sales page and I was using that to kind of sell, like that wouldn't do it. But because of everything we've set up beforehand, they receive this, this is what it looks like to work with us, all 16 pages of it. And they're like, yeah, that was great. I read it over tea and I'm so excited to talk. Yes, I want to share, again, not even I want to ask about it's yes. And I just want to share what we're up to so that you're aware, to just make sure, that's kept in mind while we're moving forward, right? That's what the sales process looks like. That's what the pre-sold experience looks like.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I can't think of the last time I bought from a sales page.
Oh no. Yeah.
If I find someone who's talking about something that I'm interested in, I get on their email list actually.
Yeah.
And then I allow them to talk to me and nurture me. And then I decide, and then I see what their offers are. And then I decide whether I'm going to work with them.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll do the same thing. I'll get on their email list. And then I'll also I'll be activated to kind of like see what they're posting on social. Like I know a lot of folks they've given way of Facebook for Instagram. I still hang on Facebook a little bit. And I'm one of those people who will read a long ass Facebook post that's really well written, that speaks exactly to my problem, what's going on, and kind of gives me that I never thought about it that way. Those are the things that have me lean in. And that's very similar to the content that we create in our process in the Nurture Matrix. But that's what has me lean in. It's like, oh, okay, yeah. Like they're speaking to exactly what's going on for me, right? Exactly what's going on for me. And they're giving me they're not telling me how to go fix it. Right. That's the kind of content that, we used to talk about the valuable content. It would be like give away your tips and tricks and all of that stuff. that's not value. That, in my view, wastes people's time because it sends them cycling, thinking that they can go fix things by themselves. And the truth is they can't. But when you have content that's really speaking to what's going on for you, presents a new perspective or a new possibility around, solving your problem. Again, you're solving the problem in the way that only, you and your business can do. But like, that is what has me like, yeah, I will DM this person or I will get on their mailing list because I'm curious now, not because they told me go try these 5 things, but because they had me really reconsider, what I had been trying to do to solve the problem. And that for me is like the deepest, most efficient nurture that you can do, because that's what's moving me actually along my buyer's journey. That how-to content is kind of taking me off the buyer's journey because it's letting me think that I can just piecemeal it and figure it out myself.
So what I'm hearing you say, again, specifically talking to you, like they know you, they know who their best fit client is, and they're being very specific and descriptive in how they're talking to you.
Exactly.
And they're positioning themselves so they understand how they uniquely solve the problem.
Yep.
Or have a different perspective.
Exactly.
And they're inviting you to consider this other perspective.
Exactly. They're super clear on what's going on for me, and they're presenting, another vantage point, another perspective, another way to look at things that's unique to their body of work for me to take in. And when that, intersects, when they've done such a good job of talking about, where I am and what's going on for me, I can't help myself. I almost have to listen unless I've seen them do something, that means that we're just not a fit values wise or whatever. I can't help myself. I'm like, I've said a couple of times with clients, when we're really getting deep into who their ideal client is, I'm like, we need this to feel like, we want your ideal client to like look around the room and just be like, do they have a camera in here? Like, are they watching me right now? In a non-creepy loving way, right? For it to feel that, that resonant, right? We can't help but pay attention to content that's written in that way.
Yeah. And I think, and tell me, you correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I kind of see nurture is a place for me to control the things that I can control. I can't control when they buy.
Absolutely.
But I want to make sure we believe same things, that they believe what I believe, and that, there's some kind of values, belief systems match, that they have the problem that I solve. And in highlighting the problem that I solve, being slightly polarizing around the problems that I don't solve.
Correct.
So we could be perfectly clear.
Yep.
Talking to their personal urgency.
Yeah. Is
this the right time for you, regardless of cart open, cart closed? But like, what is happening for you right now? Why now?
Exactly. That speaking to that internal sense of urgency is the only way that I've seen the actual, kind of pre-selling the program or having people, step in and buy. And again, I'm speaking here to people who do have like a cart open, cart closed time or have launches in their business. And even, thinking about evergreen models, like the only way that you can get someone to buy, if you've got an evergreen model, is by activating that internal sense of urgency. Otherwise, it's always next month. Right. And we see this, we enroll cohorts monthly. We don't have like you can only enroll at this time for now anyway. But we have an intake of clients that we work with every single month. And so, yeah, we have to really speak to what's going on for them in this moment that makes now, the right, perfect time. And when we do that, again, no issues, folks are ready to go. They're ready to step in because they know now is the time for them. And if for some reason, now isn't actually the time for them, they understand enough, they're nurtured enough to come back around. Like they always come back around when the time is actually right for them, versus being in this space of like, yeah, I'll come back. And it's just, it's empty promise. It's like, I'll come back, but you never hear from them ever again. And I know that happens so often for so many, business owners, coaches, et cetera, right? They're like, they said they were coming back. They're not coming back. You're not even seeing them at the next launch, right? They've checked all the way out. Now they're hiding from you,
Before, when we were chatting before we got started, you were talking about the insanity of doing the same thing over and over and sinking money into launches that aren't working.
Yeah. And that is such like, and we can ask ourselves, like, do launches really work? In some businesses, they really do. I'm in some groups with some, very established coaches, and they have just enough budget, read a lot of budget, to be able to have the launch model work for them. And I also believe that a part of the reason the launch model works for them is it's very tied to who their ideal clients are. But I think, I think there are still audiences where the launch format works. Largely, though, what I'm seeing is that tons of folks are spending, time, energy, money, attention, blood, sweat, tears, all the things in mastering the launch, meaning they're trying something different each time because they're not actually seeing the conversion work. So they start out and it's like, okay, I'm going to do the live launch method. Okay, I'm super burned out from that. I had a crappy conversion. Okay, let me try a different, let me go back to, webinars. So let me go back to, Jeff Walker, PLF. Like, let me go back to all these different, launch formats. And so they keep sort of trying to swap this launch format. And really, like, that to me is definition of insanity, where, yes, you're applying a different launch strategy, but you're essentially doing the same thing. You're doing the same mechanism for filling your programs, which is, go really hard at people for 2.5 weeks, have this cart open, cart close, and rah, rah. Like, it doesn't matter what delivery, like, this is where we can talk about kind of the medium or the platform, right? It doesn't matter, what mechanisms you're using to enroll people. If what's happening is that you do this big concentrated effort to get people to step into your programs and they don't step in, we need to look outside of the launch. And it's so funny because I know there's someone out there, well, maybe it was my copy, because this is the other way we try to fix it, right? If it's not the launch strategy we're using, well, maybe it's the copy. Maybe I'll redo the copy sequences, or maybe it's the offer. I'll retool the offer. I'll change the pricing. And you know what? Sometimes, I know sometimes the offer is off. Sometimes it is cool. Sometimes the copy is off. All right, cool. But largely what I'm seeing happening is like so much launch fatigue, so much launch frustration. And instead of looking away from the launch and thinking to ourselves, okay, if this mechanism of, waiting till certain points in the calendar year to have this big rah-rah and bring all the people in, if this is not working, instead of trying to replace it with something similar, why don't we do something completely different? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, for me, it's just such insanity. And when I think about, what can we do completely different? Again, it brings me back to nurture. We spend so much time in this sort of, an amount of new leads, right? We spend all this time in lead generation and we spend all this time in our launch cycles, right? And then in the middle of the funnel, we're just sort of like, yeah, we'll put out some content. I put out a newsletter. I'll, post some stuff on social. I'll just keep posting on social. But again, we're just doing it to do it. And there's no real intention. There's no business outcome attached to it. And I know, well, I'm doing it to nurture, but again, you have to kind of take it deeper. What does nurture actually mean?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Some folks might say, well, it's just, it's maintaining the relationship. Da, da, da. For me, that's not good enough. In a business, like, that's not good enough. That's not taking me back to the bottom line. In my view, nurture is designed inherently to pre-sell the program so people are ready for the launch or whatever you use in your business to enroll. We don't love the term launch. We try to convert all of our clients to using the language active enrollment campaign, because over time, when they work with us, the need to rely on a launch in that way, it kind of dissipates. So it gets to be not a launch and instead an active enrollment campaign. Right. But it's really, we got to stop relying on the launch. We got to instead have folks pre-sold before you even start any of your launch or active enrollment campaigns, so that they're stepping in kind of with like card, maybe the card's not already in hand, but like the wallet's open. You know what I mean? The wallet's open. And when you do that, you just can see how much more efficient it is, because rather than expecting all these cold leads, essentially cold and your lukewarm leads that you think are warm because you've been dashing out whatever kinds of content at them, but are not actually moving along their buyer's journey, right? They're kind of checked out, and you can know this by if you're someone who you're sending out email regularly and you notice that your open rates are not that great. You notice that your unsubscribes are pretty darn high, like they're checking out, especially after they've kind of gone through your initial top of funnel sequence, like they're checking out at a pretty rapid rate. And you've got what I call kind of the leaky bucket syndrome in your lead gen, right? Because they're coming in and they're kind of like leaking out, whether they're physically leaving or just kind of like putting, they've stuck you in the promotions folder and never activated you into the main, the main attraction folder, right? So they're checked all the way out. And so you got this leaky bucket and you're expecting the leads that aren't really there to be ready to buy, or the brand new ones that you brought in just for the launch. And we've got this sort of self-fulfilling cycle, really, because now what's going to happen is those cold leads are in the launch. They're not ready to buy either, but instead of having an intentional strategy to nurture them, they're going to, dissipate and kind of float away after the launch is over as well. So here we are back to the place of needing more new leads, for the next launch. And instead, we want to, kind of stop that insanity, stop trying to find a new way to attract better leads and stop trying to find a new way to launch, but instead go back to the middle of the funnel and think, if someone's not ready to buy today, what needs to happen? What is the journey they need to take right with me in order to be ready to buy? Like, that's what you need to insert into your business. Without that, you're again, definition of insanity, and you're wasting a lot of time, energy, attention, and money, most of all, right? You're wasting a ton of money on this.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, to go back to the point that we were talking about before around saturation, I'm with you. I think there's more than enough clients for the people who want them. But I think that your level of business skill and literacy needs to be coming way, way up in this market.
Yeah.
And I think you need to think like a business person and not like a coach who wants to help people or inspire people. I know I get a lot about like, well, I want to be inspirational, or I can't create that because I'm not inspired. And I'm like, this is not about inspiration or being inspired. That is fucking false.
Exactly.
And I'm sorry if that is like, if people are like disconnecting from this podcast, but it is dangerous for me as a business coach, business strategist, to let people believe A, they can only work when inspired, and B, that their goal is to inspire people.
Absolutely. And here, the thing that you said earlier is like that, well, I just want to help people. Guess what? Helping them to take action to solve a problem that they've got is helping them. And if you can't actually, you can't help them truly unless they are stepping in and having transformation. So when you're just like, I want to help people, but you don't actually want to help them to step in and work with you, that's a massive disconnect. You're not actually helping anyone.
Yeah. And this is really about leadership too, because people are craving to be led. When your people find you, regardless of who you are or what you sell, they are most likely confused, frustrated, concerned. Like, they have some, whether you call it pain points. I'm a big fan of Jobs to Be Done theory by Tamika Auwai around like, what's the job to be done? Hat tip to my buddy Ross O'Loughlin for bringing that to my attention. They need something to be done. And so when they come to you and you're all over the place because you're inspired one moment to talk about this, and then you're inspired the next moment to talk about that, all you're doing is adding to their confusion, frustration, and their inability to get the job done that they need done. You are not leading in that moment. Leading them looks like, hi, I've got you. I know, I see you. Here's some empathy. I understand where you're at because I'm an expert and I work with people like you, and I have seen this before, and maybe I've been there too. And here's what you need to do next. Here's how you can really understand some more details and nuance about the situation you're in. And here's what you can do about that in terms of like what to think about, what to decide on, or what have you. And you are leading them to making a decision. That is your highest level of service.
Amen. Absolutely. Bang on.
But when we're not clear, people will stay stuck where they're at because they don't know. We're adding confusion.
Absolutely adding confusion.
I think this person can help me. I've seen that they helped this other person, or I know them. This is the other thing that really keeps, I think, people stuck in their business is they've started a business that leverages their early adopters.
Yeah.
An already warmed up audience.
Yeah.
But then unless they want to keep selling to the same people, they have to expand their audience. they have to expand their reach, get more leads. And when you bring these leads on, the likelihood of them as being as warm as these early adopters are pretty much not there.
Yeah, precisely. They can't be.
Right. You now need to be very clear in how you're going to warm these folks up so that they understand who you help and how you help them and when you help them. Because, early adopters, we've all had them early in our businesses where we weren't as clear. I've had people who've worked with me just because they knew me or because I just like Tara and her energy. I think she can help me. I think she understands. Right. Yeah. But that ship has sailed for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we grew for years just by referral only and didn't even have a marketing presence. I would joke, I would go and speak on a podcast and they'd be like, where can you find, I'm like, nowhere actually, because we don't have time and space to do that right now. And of course, thinking as a business owner, I said, okay, well, referrals are amazing. We love them. Oh my goodness. And, the longevity of this business can't be sustained. And the growth that I desire can't be sustained by, waiting for the next referral to come in. And so we start to put things in place. And in that process, of course, you understand deeply what nurture marketing means, Tara, but you wouldn't be surprised how many times I have to just answer this is what I mean by nurture marketing, because the term nurture has become so, it doesn't mean anything, right? For a lot of people.
Think it means?
Often what they think is nurture marketing. Well, yeah, I'm nurturing my people. They think it's another word for just kind of creating random content. Sometimes I think,
without a business outcome.
Yeah, without a business outcome, right? They're intrigued by it, certainly. But a lot of them do think they think, well, I'm nurturing. I post every day on social. I send out an email once a week.
So when I talk about nurture marketing, I curse Gary Vee for this.
That's exactly it. That's exactly what happens.
So I'm so glad you're with me here. But Gary Vee is jab, jab. Is it jab, 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 right hook or jab, jab, right hook?
Some along that.
Whatever his jabs are.
Yeah.
His jabs are nurture, give, ask for the sale.
Yeah.
Here is the problem. Women specifically get stuck in the jabbing, in the nurturing.
Yeah.
And then aren't as comfortable asking for the sale. So it's nurture. Can I ask now? Maybe maybe I need to nurture one more time.
Nurture. Also, women get stuck in the give without understanding what is actually supportive to give.
Correct. So it's give all of my stuff away, give all of my value away. So women have a hard time. I love this, where this is going. Who wants to come to a sleepover with me and Tamika?
We are having one. It's happening.
Because Tamika and I have actually done sleepovers.
We have. It's been fun.
But what I think is, now I lost my damn train of thought. We were talking about sleepovers, but
it's all good.
What were we saying?
We were talking about the fact that women, they overgive. They get stuck in the overgiving piece.
Yes. Oh, I remember what I was saying. Okay, so women get a little bungled up around value.
Yes.
And so, what is your value that people are going to pay you for? And then you have other value that you can be giving that is valuable, that is not what people pay you for. And it was actually Danielle Laporte, who I was listening to. It was a random podcast with Danielle Laporte. And it was so many years ago at this point, I'm going to not quote her properly, but she was saying the gist was, she's like, she meets all these heads of state, like the Dalai Lama and all these people. And I think they were asking her how she stays grounded, interacting with really big names and heads of state and things like that. And she's like, well, I think about what my value is and I forget what she said, but she's like, I know a little bit about building online communities. I think I'm pretty humorous. And I don't remember what else she said, but I'm like, oh, I can relate to that because I can bring value in ways I've recommended books where people are like, oh my gosh, that book changed my life. Thank you for recommending that to me. And it's built a connection. It's not me giving away the thing I do, or we were talking about value and helping them decide.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. I'm like, in my view, the biggest value that you can give to someone who is in a problem or who is in a place of it, I love that term. I'm going to have to look that up as well. What did you say? That there's a job to be done, is helping them to think about their problem in a way that opens them up to actually flip in solving it. That to me is the highest value you can offer someone in your community. Like books are great. Humor is great. Quotes are great. All of those pieces are great. And the biggest value you can give them is helping them to have that shift in perspective around their problem so that they can actually put their freaking foot in front of the other and take some action.
Yep.
Right? Like get the problem solved, get the job done.
Coaching. It's not free training. It's not how to, it's not solving the problem, because then they have no reason. This doesn't help anybody. Like I can't tell you, in my life, there'll be people who I know personally who like, I have no interest in them being my client or anything. And I'll be like, yeah, I think you should do A, B, and C. Right. And if they actually took what I said and went and did it, they'd have a tremendous result, but they don't, because it was free.
Exactly, because it was free. And again, like, going back to our earlier point, the thing with the go do this, go do that, here's some free coaching, it leaves them thinking that they're solving the problem when they're not. It leaves them thinking they're getting the job done when they're not. And it's actually making them more confused, because like, why aren't they like, I'm doing something about my problem supposedly, but I'm not actually seeing the outcome of it being solved. So like, what gives? It leaves them in frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And here comes another coach who understands what we're talking about, understands how nurturing is really around helping them to understand their problem in a way that allows them to actually solve it. And then off they go with that coach, because it's like, oh yeah, I'm not supposed to be out here trying to solve these 5 tips that, do these tips and tricks on my own. I actually need to go over here and I need to step in container and I need to have frameworks and processes and whatever your magic is. But like someone else comes in and teaches them how to think about their problem so that they can take the action and get the result. And like, that's where the clients are going. That's where they're going to go.
Yeah.
Right?
And the things that you don't realize, like the value that you have in so many other ways. Like, so for example, I do have a lot of clients who sell B2B into other businesses on a specific topic. So maybe like an executive coach, right? And the value that executive coach has is that they're in multiple different businesses and probably different industries, seeing what's happening with the leadership teams in these areas. So what if you did a white paper or had some nurture around this research that you can report on that you're seeing, and people are like, oh, wow, that's not just happening in my company. Oh, wow, like this is actually a thing. And that could be incredibly helpful. Or like in real estate, where it's like, here's what's happening in the market right now. Like that's helpful to people who are buying without doing anything for them that you would normally get paid for. So it's like, be creative.
Absolutely. We have a case study that we'll share with folks that it kind of like, it's not a traditional case study, but it kind of walks them through sort of the process of like, what happens when we insert the nurture matrix in the business. And we're not telling them anything about what to do, like how to go and solve it, how to go and
showing them what's possible.
Exactly. We're showing them what's possible. And we're showing them what the process looks like. But that's valuable for them because they get to understand that what they've been doing so far hasn't been working and why, and what possibility could look like instead. And it's hugely valuable for them, but it's not like, here's, 5 steps to go and start to nurture your community. Like we don't do any of that. Really. I mean, we've got a workshop, but even in that, when we're sharing like strategic shifts you can make. We're not saying, hey, go do all of these things and you don't need us anymore. It's like, here's some things to think about, to think differently about. And if you'd like our help, here's how we can work together. Right. That is a service that is valuable.
Yeah. Well, we've hit a lot of really good points. We hit things that are working, things that aren't working. We hit, don't keep doing the same thing over and over again if it's not working.
Please don't.
We've talked about what nurture looks like and why I think Gary Vee is terrible and what he shared around jab, jab, right hook. Is there anything else you feel like we need to leave the listeners with? Or like, what's one last parting?
I think we've given a lot. And I think, the biggest thing to walk away with is if you've been nurturing in the way that we've been talking about, like, as the antithesis of what you should be doing, let yourself off the hook a little bit, right? You were doing something. Cause I know folks who, like, when I say, how are you nurturing your people? They're like, deer in the headlights, because they're not really doing anything. So, what you've been doing so far is absolutely better than nothing. And when you know differently, do differently, right? That's a Maya Angelou, quote for you. When you know different, do different. And so my biggest sort of or last final parting things that we want to leave with folks is just take what we've shared here and start to think about, like, what is that journey that your ideal client needs to move through? If they're not ready to buy yet, what do they need to see, hear, feel, know, understand, experience in order to step in and work with you, and start to really think more strategically around drawing them to that result? Start creating content that is more intentional and drawing them to that result. If you need some help, you know where to find us. And, again, for me, it's like, when we're gonna shine the light on some things, I want to see some folks take some action. So that's my biggest takeaway. It's like, now that you've heard different, you can see in your business where you've been maybe giving value in the way that's not supportive, and let's flip that around and start to give some true value of high service to your business and of high service to your ideal clients.
Yeah, I'll build on that. And I'll say, if you're over nurturing or nurturing in a way that is giving away all of your value, know that you're not alone. Know that this gets very entangled with our desire to either help, or that we feel responsible, or that we have not been taught how to do it differently. A lot of things that you're reading about nurture and seeing might not be applicable to you. So, like, Gary Vee can go jab, jab, jab all he freaking wants, right? Because he's got this huge team. They're following him around. They're recording him. He's putting out all this value. He's making money in other ways. And, like, it's not a fair comparison when you look at that. Most likely, my audience is primarily female. They're primarily between the ages of 35 and 50-ish. They have a life, they have children, they have a partner, they might be having children and a parent that they're taking care of. Like, we have lives. Like, we're not here to be followed around with D-Rock, creating reams of value, of jabbing. And so, and I think, what I love about Tamika is that she's very clear that she's talking about nurture. And there's a lot of folks out there talking about marketing, but they're not specific in the marketing that they're talking about. And so you might think you're getting the information you need, but they're maybe cutting too wide of a swath in marketing. And I think this is one area that has a lot of low-lying fruit for folks.
Yeah.
And it actually fits really well with, like, things like empathy and, like, care and, like, really, like, some of those more feminine qualities of leadership, emotional intelligence, like, is all here in this nurture stuff that I think that if women just had a little bit different perspective, they would do really well. And it would, one, lead to more revenue, but also save more time.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, the more you can drill down, your point about the most marketers having that really wide, sort of umbrella. Again, it's just a really easy place for you to get stuck doing a lot extra. And again, like, I'm very much like your clients in your community, Tara, and like you, like, I got kids, I got dance class to drop people off to, karate to pick them up from, and a life outside of my business. So I just want to get as efficient as possible. And I want to be of service as well. And the intersection of that for me is in getting really clear about who your ideal clients are and the messaging that they need to receive to, to move forward and take action, and that can be achieved again with, like, really strategic nurture marketing.
I love when you say that your content requires a business outcome.
Yeah.
That's a big smack in the face. That's going to be a big smack in the face for some folks. Tell everybody where they can find you, my friend.
For sure. You can find us on the socials at Orisha Creative, Orisha Creative on Facebook and Instagram. And, if you are sort of curious about nurture marketing and, and kind of what we're talking about here, I have a nurture opportunity scorecard that you can go and download for free. It's just a really easy way that you can go through what you've been doing so far and already and see if there are any gaps or opportunities, to shift things in the way that Tara and I have been talking about.
I love that, because what Tamika is doing is she's helping you assess where you're at. So you know if you need support and if you need help and how she can help you based on what the scorecard says.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can grab that at nurturematrix.com/scorecard.
Smart move. Love it. Thanks for coming on, Tamika.
My deepest pleasure, my dear.
If you found this podcast valuable, help us develop more bold leaders in the world by sharing this episode with your friends, colleagues, and other bold leaders. Also, if you haven't done so already, please leave a review. I consider reviews like podcast currency, and it's the one thing you can do to help us out here at the Bold Leadership Revolution HQ. We would be so grateful for it. Special thanks goes to Stacey Harris from Uncommonly More, who is the producer and editor of this podcast. Go check them out for all your digital marketing and content creation needs. Be sure to tune into the next episode to help you embrace your ambition and leave the grind behind.